Can. Okay, Thomas, let me introduce Thomas as the museum manager out there in Everglades City. Let me just say, a wonderful guy with some great stories. And we're so happy that he volunteered to present a piece here about a subject that he was studying and which is dear to our hearts because Bob Fink was a well-known illustrator. His father was Denman Fink, and we know him as one of the great designers and brains behind the beauty of Coral Gables. So it's a wonderful family. George Merrick married into George Merrick's mother was a Fink. And so so there's that family connection for something that we can relate to. And so without giving away all the cool stuff, let me just introduce Thomas Lockyear.
Hi, everybody. Everybody can see the big screen with my face on there and all that crazy stuff, hopefully? All right, good. Now, let me see. All right, so. All right, there I am. I'm afraid this is going to advance again because it seems to have a little bit of a delay. All right, there it is. So this talk is about the art of Bob Fink. Now, I am not an expert on art or Bob Fink or any of those things. I do have an art degree and a little bit of a background in these sorts of things, but this is more a story of my journey, finding out who he was and what he did. And I've been a museum professional for not quite 16 years now. And, you know, I've got kind of a crazy story where I was a Wisconsin native and I finished the last page of a book called Quit Your Job and Move to Key West as I landed in the middle of a snowstorm in Madison, Wisconsin, and said, I'm doing this, you know, and people say, well, what brought you to Florida? I say my midlife crisis at 38. And so I thought I had it made in the shade down in Key West. I walked into the Borders bookstore and they offered me the assistant manager position. But Hurricane Wilma destroyed that store 3 months after I started working there. And I was like, now what do I do? You know, I had completely upended my life and moved there. And the first job that I was able to find after the water went down and things finally started opening was taking tickets at Pat Croce's Pirate Museum. Now it's up in St. Augustine, but it used to be in Key West. And I've always been a history guy, always been interested in those sorts of things, but it used to be more on the book end. But I eventually discovered I had completely missed my calling. Museum studies is now a major in college. It wasn't when I was there, but so I've done everything from take tickets to executive director, and I've learned that I like things a little bit more in between. Once you get up to that executive director level, you don't get to work on the exhibits and really do the fun, cool history stuff as much. My wife and I moved from the Keys to the mainland in what was it? I guess 2013, and you know, we were a little further up north where there was actually frost and things like that, and we thought, oh, we got to come back to somewhere reasonable. And I started looking at jobs and found this position at Museum of the Everglades. It's somewhere that when we lived in the Keys, we used to go to Everglades City for Valentine's Day. We did it 3 consecutive years in a row. We loved it there. And I never imagined that I would be the manager of that little museum that we spent some time in. My very first year there, I started in January of 17, and this story starts just after that. So but it starts with that lady from Coconut Grove. The Museum of the Everglades for many years did a Marjorie Stoneman Douglas festival, a week-long series of events and talks and things like that. And they would have an annual Marjorie Stoneman Douglas luncheon. We still have the luncheon in February, but we it's now referred to as History and Heritage Week. That's a whole other story that I'll explain at another time if somebody wants me to. But we still pay homage to the Grand Dame of the Glades. But so my very first Marjorie Stoneman Douglas luncheon, I was just walking up the steps. I had taken care of a bunch of things at the museum, and somebody came up and it was this you remember people that you never see again differently, but I remember him as being this sort of bohemian character. And so I always I picture him and his partner in my mind as almost like these sort of beatniks. But he came up and he said, "I hear you're the guy I want to talk to." And I said, "Well, that could be. How can I help you?" And he said, "Well, I'm Bob Fink's stepson." And I fully admit I had no idea who Bob Fink was. And I just gave him the blank look. He said, he drew all the pictures for the book by the lady you're having the luncheon about? And I was like, oh, Robert Fink, sure. And he said, yeah, that was my stepdad. And he said, and I've got something in the car. I've got one of the original prints that was used in the book. And I wanted to know if you want it for the museum. And I said, absolutely, we want it. This is, the huge, exciting thing. And he said, I need to let you know that it's in pretty rough shape because Bob saved it from the fire that happened in his studio. And my mom, his wife, loved it and dragged it around with her all these years, even though it's all beat up and damaged and everything like that. And then he went on to tell me that he had tried to donate it to the National Park Service and they didn't want it. And told them to maybe check with us. And you see an image of it here that it looks better in this picture. It's in a conservator's office, so it's probably been dusted off and sort of laid out and made to look as nice as it possibly could. But it had a lot of issues. But I said, yeah, we definitely want it. So we worked it out, and we did the donation form and the deed of gift and all those official things that you do with a museum donation, and that's how my journey with Robert Fink started. So once we had the luncheon and I took this print and my first order of business was to find this print in the book. So I go to the copy that I had of the book, and I start going through, and pretty much all the pictures are, as you can see, they're that oval shape, with the exception of the inner leaf inside the covers is a longer, bigger picture. And I'm looking through, and I went through the book about 4 times, and I could not find the print. And I thought, well, I must just have an older edition of it. Maybe it was in one of the first ones. And I knew that we had a first edition at the Collier Museum in Naples in the vault that I could go through. So, but I'm looking at these ovals and I'm comparing it, and I'm like, this is definitely the same artist. There's no question in my mind that from the way that I'm looking, and I'm very excited that we have, in our hands an original illustration from the book. But even after I get the first edition, I cannot find this image in the book. And I start to really second guess myself because his signature in a lot of these is just RF. And in our print, it's almost like a Walt Disney style cartoon logo. And I'm thinking there can't be 2 guys from this time period that were working in pen and ink and woodcuts but his stepson was absolutely adamant that this was an original print from the book. So I start trying to find things online, but meanwhile I'm going through, and I'm really becoming a fan of this guy's work. I'm really looking at these small illustrations in Everglades River of Grass, and they're historic topics, and they're, you know, dynamic, they're detailed, and just I really am enjoying this work, and it's making me more excited about it. You know, it's perfect style for the book. You know, he's contrasting the man-made world with the natural world, showing the you know the sugar processing plants and the draining of the glades and all these different things, as well as historic scenes. So where's the illustration? I'm looking all over, and I'm trying to do these searches on the internet and find out what I can about Robert Fink. And there's almost nothing. The only place that I can find anything at all about him is on an art site called askart.com. And there's a 70 characters of a biography about him. And it says, you know, for subscription only. And I think, really, I have to buy a subscription in order to read the biography of this guy. But then it says that all the biography information is free on Fridays. And I'm like, well, you know, I've waited my whole life to learn about Bob Fink. I can wait a little bit longer. So I wait until the next Friday, and I read the entire description. And there's a fair amount of information. I noticed that it's written by a woman named Nancy Giacchi. And I kind of poke around and figure out who she is. And she's his daughter. She's his middle daughter. And she's the one that's written the biography. And as I kind of poke around and find these different things, I find she's also an artist. And I find a website where she's a member of an artist group, and there's an email address for her. You know, if you're interested in purchasing her art. And so I decide, you know, it's rude, but I'm going to do it anyway. And that is, I write her a nice email that says, Ms. Giacchi, hi, I'm you know, sorry to take advantage of this contact address when I'm not actually inquiring about your artwork, but I'm inquiring about what I believe is your father's artwork. And I kind of told her the story and what I had and what I was interested in doing, and just trying to find out what it was. And not 5 minutes later, the telephone rang at the museum. And I picked it up, not expecting it to be Nancy Giacchi on the other line. And she immediately tells me, she said, I'm going to let you know I'm 83 and I'm in the middle of chemo. So if I fade out on you here, you know, don't take it personally, but I'm going to answer all the questions that I possibly can. And I described to her what I had, and she said, well, you'll have to send it to me and I'll take a look, but we have some problems with that. And I said, okay, what's that? And she said, my computer's broken. And I said, okay. And she said, and my son is the one that fixes my computer, but he's not going to be here for probably another 2 months. So, but send me the things that you have. And after my son comes, I'll take a look at it and I'll respond to you. I really didn't imagine that I would ever hear back from her. But I did. And she sent me some amazing things. This is one of the things that she sent, and it's not our picture, but it's very, very similar to our picture. It's wider, but I immediately notice it's got the same bird, it's got the same plant, it's got the same ripple effect in the water. You know, this is, you know, what's going on here. And I noticed that it's got that funky little Bob Fink cartoony logo down there. So we're back on track with these things. And she said this was part of a study, a series of studies that he did for the cover of the book. And he really wanted it to be black and white, but all the studies that he did were ultimately rejected. She also sent me this one here, which is a watercolor that he did. Now, you can see on the right kind of a detail of that watercolor, and then look at the cover of the book. That's the same bird. You know, again, the same ripple effect in the water, but things are changing. So you can see how many pieces of art he created, and you know that how many different ways that he played with this tree. He did block prints of it. He did just black and white. He did watercolors of it. I believe that the final that ended up on the cover of the book is actually acrylic, not watercolor. So this is, you know, this sort of fascinating puzzle piece in a process. She was an incredible wealth of both images and information. She told me all these things about him, and I was madly writing things down as much as I could, and hoping that I would be able to read my own writing later. That he was born in 1905 in the Flatbush section of Brooklyn. And, you know, one of the things that I was learning about is that he was an artist from a very young age. As Rob mentioned, you know, this is the son of Denman Fink, who was a nationally known artist and illustrator. So he was definitely following in his father's footsteps, but you know, wasn't just, oh, I want to be like daddy. He had tremendous talent, and you'll see as we look at more of this stuff. And he did attend the private school Art Students League in New York City, but they relocated to Florida in the early 1920s because his father took that position as artistic director for the Coral Gables Company. Now, things that we'll kind of talk about later, married and went back to New York in the early 1930s. And when she mentioned the studio fire, I said, okay, well, this corroborates what the stepson had said. I figured out after the third time that I mentioned the stepson, and she completely stopped talking, that it was not the stepson was not somebody that she wanted involved in our conversation. I don't know why, but it just, you know, so I never really got anything beyond that. She did tell me that very few things were saved from the fire. And she also said that he was so heartbroken from losing all his life's work that he never painted in watercolor again after the fire. He lived in Worthington, New York, until he died in 1989 at the age of 83. But he did make trips to Florida. He always, as she said, Florida held a special place in his heart. And she told me stories about a lot of different things, and I'll bring some of those stories out. One of the things that she told me was that he had done illustrations for Boys Life magazine, the Boy Scouts magazine. So I started hunting this stuff down, and the neat thing that I was able to do is I was able to find these things and share them with her. A lot of this stuff she had never seen before. So when I could find something like, the Christmas issue of Boys Life magazine from December of 1919, it had two different pieces by him in there. One about a Boy Scout trip to the front in World War I. And then there was another that was actually about him, 14-year-old artist. And this one's kind of funny because it talks about him, and it says that the one thing that he doesn't like to draw is girls. He would prefer not to have to draw girls. He likes to draw cowboys and pirates and regular fellas. I haven't been able to trace down any proof to this, but I look at that pirate there, and does anybody remember in the back of the magazines when there were the drawing tests where can you draw the pirate? And I swear that's the exact same pirate, but rather than being in profile, it's looking face front. Part of this journey with Bob Fink was finding things that he had done, and in some cases I could actually verify that it was his work. In other cases, uncredited. That's one of the things about working in commercial art, is a lot of the time that you don't get to sign your work, and it goes uncredited like that. One of the other things that she gave me was a picture, and she said, I have no idea what this is. You know, and it was all these guys wearing, you know, Seminole patchwork shirts and Lone Ranger masks. And she said that, you know, she thought it was some sort of secret society or something like that. Bob Fink is the one kneeling on the bottom right. And I said, you know, I don't know, but I'll find out. And so I eventually discover Iron Arrow Honor Society. And when I start researching the Iron Arrow Honor Society, they keep referring to something called the Founding Nine. And when I count the guys in the picture, there are 9 of them there. And I'm like, wow, I bet he was one of the Founding Nine. And, you know, for those that don't know, you know, Iron Arrow evolved, and again, I'm not an expert. This is just what I learned from them and what I could read, from being kind of a secret society, fraternity type thing, you know, like Skull and Bone, to really being more of a prestigious thing, something that is awarded only to people that really, really benefit the school, benefit the community, and it's the highest honor that is bestowed to a University of Miami graduate. So I actually emailed their president and I said, hi, I'm trying to find out if Bob Fink was one of the Founding Nine. And I think it was the 1970s that they started allowing women in, because their president is now a woman. And she said, how do you know that? Because it's not who the Founding Nine are is not something that's common knowledge. And I told her, and she said, well, we'd really like to see the picture. So I sent them that, but I was able to go back to Nancy and say, that picture that you were wondering what it was, you know, it's a very important thing. It's you know, it's an honor society that has been continued, and you know, your dad helped found it in 1926, and it's something that you know, people really, really you know, take great pride in becoming members of these days. She told me about his friend Eugene, and that Eugene had was a guy that kind of traveled around, basically around the world, you know, went to the Middle East and you know, throughout the Caribbean, all these different places. And he wrote a book about it. And he decided that he was going to have Bob do the illustrations for it. So this is probably the first, you know, big publishing house commission that Bob got. But he went and met Eugene down in Cuba. And from what Nancy said, he spent the better part of 2 years down there in Cuba. And you have to think about Cuba, you know, in the late 20s. And that, you know, the casinos are going, and it's really, you know, a place where the rich and famous congregate. And she said that he just absolutely loved it. And he made a great living drawing pictures of people. He would hang around the tennis courts, and, you know, some of the cafes, and do watercolors, but also sketches of people, and sold them. And he became well known enough that among the elite, as she put it in Cuba, that he had a one-man show at a gallery there. So that he had kind of a colorful life early on. He did make his way back shortly thereafter. And these are some more of his illustrations from the Great Horn Spoon. And you know, again, I was noticing that, you know, really, really distinctive style. And I just, you know, again, I can't say enough how I walked away from this journey as just a real fan of his work. And I'll show you a couple things where I can't resist when I come across something by Bob Fink. I still usually end up buying it now. But so he comes back and gets involved with the Coral Gables Company. Now I write here, timing is everything. So I'm, you know, I've had this piece, and my my tenure at Museum of the Everglades, I came in January of 2017. And we know what happened in September of 2017. The museum that I manage took in about a foot of water. And it's over 2 feet off the ground. Everglades City was really ground zero in Collier County for the storm surge. And we didn't lose any artifacts, but we are a historic building on the National Register with original Dade County pine floors. And my life was suddenly, you know, centered around you know, seeing that building saved, preserved, restored. But somewhere in the process of all this, I came across that there was an exhibit at the Coral Gables Museum. And I had mentioned it to my boss. We're a 5-museum system with 2 museums in Naples, 1 in Marco Island, 1 in Immokalee, and 1 in Everglades. And our executive director is up over those 5 museums. So I had told my boss about this, and she said, "I think that you've earned a few days away from slogging through the mud and saving the museum. Go see the exhibit." And so I came down to the Coral Gables Museum. You know, like I said, I almost missed this exhibit because it was ending at the end of September, and I was literally knee deep in Hurricane Irma. But I met Eliza, the curator, and you know, talked to her about what we had, and she eventually introduced me to Arva Parks Moore. I always get that wrong. Arva Moore Parks. I'm sorry. And you know, so my journey to figure out who and what Bob Fink was comes to Coral Gables, and I start really digging through these things, and you know, getting little bits and pieces. Now, that's Bob on the left. Early 1930s, and we know who that is on the right, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. And if you were not aware, while she was certainly writing for what would become the Miami Herald, she was also writing copy for the Coral Gables Company. So they met as people working for the Coral Gables Company, working on the brochures, working on advertising copy, a lot of the advertising that was actually being published eventually in the paper that would be the Herald, getting people to, you know, buy into the dream that was Coral Gables. And as was mentioned, this was a family business. Now, I'm not going to go too deeply into this because I'm already far afield from my area of expertise. You know, I love Florida history, and I've spent the last 4 years really immersing myself in Collier County, Everglades, Chokoloskee, all that history, and really learning a lot of that stuff. And in the time that I've spent at museums, certainly there was a lot of Florida Keys history. There was a lot of Henry Flagler history. Obviously, you know, I worked at a pirate museum, and there was some of that. but I feel like I've got a finite amount of space, and every time that I start filling it up with new stuff, it pushes other things out, particularly when I start to get into genealogy. And you know, it's a little complex, and you know, Rob had mentioned that Denman Fink was George Merrick's uncle, and you know, you had a couple of the Finks, one working as the architect, Denman Fink really working as, you know, artistic director, artistic visionary. Nancy was very, very adamant that Denman Fink, her grandfather, didn't get the credit that he really deserved, and she really pushed the idea that you know, that the Venetian pool was 100% his idea, and you know, it would never have happened had it not been for the drawings and paintings and things that he did. But both you know, George Merrick's brother Richard had gone to the same art school in New York that Bob had gone to, and they both ended up working, if not just summers, you know, doing more and more work for the Coral Gables Company as time went on. So, and you know, this image here, one of those things that's just, you know, it's a tiny footnote in these things. The Granada shops, never constructed, but you know, it was part of the plan, and the drawing that Bob did was, you know, what was selling this part of the idea. His work is there if you hunt for it. And I've ended up, every time I came across something that was related to Coral Gables, and I bought a lot of different used books and pamphlets and things like that about the architecture. And, you know, I admit that I stopped short of going through the entire archive of the Coral Gables Company page by page, because at the end of the day, this is a fantastic story as it relates to something that we came to acquire for my museum. But at some point I say, you know, I'm out of my swim lane here. It's certainly information that I'm more than happy to share with other museum professionals or historians who are equally interested. And, you know, for me, I had never really been to Coral Gables and really experienced it, and really, you know, started to fall in love with it. It's, you know, it's amazing. I love the vision. I love the dream, but I've stopped short of, you know, really having an index of exactly every work that Bob drew and going through. I did get to a point where I think that a lot of the time I can recognize when I think it's probably him, and that sometimes I'm wrong, and sometimes you can't tell either way. The old advertising, you know, amazing drawings in there, and a lot of it, you know, Arva Moore Park's books. You know, the easier one to find is obviously Son of the South Wind, more recent. The other one, Your Castles in Spain Made Real. You know, it's out of print. It's harder to find. I love that book. I think that it's remarkable, and it does go in and specifically credit him in several places for the things that he did. This being one of those images, La Puerta del Sol. I love this picture, and you know, the unique sense of composition and the artistic approach that Bob Fink brought to architectural, but also advertising renderings. You know, the man, the dog, the positioning, the use of negative space. You know, not to sound like an art history class or something, but I think that he was an amazing artist. And again, I just, you know, I would find these little things and just be entranced by the image. And as much as stylistic as these black and white images are, you know, they're the sort of thing that I look at, and I find them really sort of, you know, they transport you to that place. Now, there are definitely overlooked contributions. In the Creating the Dream exhibit at the Coral Gables Museum, this is one of those places where, you know, I'm looking really closely at things, and in the exhibit area that talks about Henry George Fink, there's a drawing by Bob. And if you look at the close-up on the left where it's circled, there's not even, you know, it's even cut off. They weren't really paying attention to, you know, leaving the entire signature in there. It wasn't significant who it was, because this was just another one of those images of the place, and the style was what was important, and the building was important. But there he is in that exhibit, and it was one of those things, those aha moments that I found very exciting to find his work in the museum there. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that in the Dream Team section of that exhibit, all those portraits of the major players were done by his daughter, Nancy Giacchi. Now, I started really searching for Bob Fink work high and low. I was planning a Marjorie Stoneman Douglas exhibit for February of 18, but I was going to have a whole section that was all Bob Fink's work, the Everglades art of Bob Fink. And I found this image on eBay. And this is, you know, that's his watercolor work. And, you know, Cities Service was the name of what we know today is Citgo. I don't even know if they exist anymore, because those companies keep getting bought up. I wanted this poster so badly, but they wanted $2,000 for it. And while I love the work, and you know, I just couldn't, wasn't in my budget, as they say. But you know, the inset in the top right, you can see his signature there. And I thought it was really interesting, because as I was creating this exhibit and I found Bob Fink doing work for Cities Service, one of the stories that I was going to tell was about, and I called it Driving Ms. Marjorie. And I wanted a 1947 map that showed this. And I just randomly ordered from an auction site, a 1947 Florida map. It ended up being Cities Service. Now, it's not credited anywhere, but I look at that artwork on the front there. I'm pretty confident that that's Bob Fink's artwork on that Cities Service map. And that was something that happened by chance. Now, this is a great story that Nancy told me. And, you know, whenever we would talk about the book, she wanted to make very clear, she said, he never got a penny. And she thought that was a horrible thing. I don't think he ever asked for a penny. We're going to look at some other things in a second, where he definitely, he did work for the University of Miami. He did work for the city of Miami, and didn't ask for any money, because he loved it. You know, he felt it was his contribution to a place that he loved, an institution that he loved. And she said that Dad would fly down on his own dime. And, you know, a lot of people know Marjorie Stoneman Douglas never drove, never got a driver's license, did not drive. So he would come down and he would rent a car, and they would drive back and forth across the Everglades. You know, she didn't set foot in the Everglades until she was 72. She definitely went across it and looked at a lot of stuff. And what they would do is they'd drive back and forth and make decisions about things that they want to have illustrations of. And she said, and one night they had driven all the way across the state, and they were up, you know, on the other side near Fort Myers. And she said, and back then, when it got dark, it was dark. and she said, and Dad was tired and saying, yeah, you know, he wasn't that excited about driving back across the state on that road. And so they started looking for somewhere to stay. And she said they ended up staying at some commune. And I said, a commune? And she said, yeah, I don't really know anything about it other than he told me that there was no begetting going on and they eventually died out. And I said, oh, the Coercion Unity Settlement. And if you, in Southwest Florida, we all know what that is. It's the Coercion Unity Settlement is now a state park, but they were kind of a religious cult who believed that the earth was hollow and that their leader Cyrus Teed was immortal, but they were all celibate. So this commune, as she referred to it, where they got room and board for the night, was the Coercion Unity Settlement. And Marjorie Stoneman Douglas actually wrote about this place in Everglades River of Grass. And I thought, wow, what are the chances? And that's probably why it ended up in there, is because of the fact that they ended up staying there and spending some time with those people. But again, it was one of those stories that I was able to tell Nancy. I said, oh, I know where that is. You know, I know who those people are. When I explained it to her, she thought it was very funny. But she said that's just like Dad, that he would, you know, knock on someone's door like that and you know, get them to put him up for the night. Now I started finding other things. I found illustrations in children's books, a lot of sports stuff. I have found some hockey pictures, and these are obviously football pictures. I found that he did the covers for pulp fiction, pulp romance novels, and you know, some of them, you know, awfully risque for the day. So he was doing everything from you know, little children's books to pulp fiction for grown-ups. These are some of the things that I've collected. These are magazine advertisements. One from the late 30s, one from the mid 40s. Different size magazines. They've been, you know, these are people that tear magazines apart and then sell them piece by piece. So I don't even know what magazines they're necessarily from, but both of them have the same message, and it's come early, stay through May. And it was really, you know, promoting tourism and really emphasizing, you know, Miami as this place where you want to come and spend a lot of time and everything that you could do. And you know, you can see Bob Fink's beautiful artwork there. Ice your worries down, come greet the sun. Now, among all these things that because I'm always looking for a little piece of history related to the Everglades, I found this by accident. This is our block print. On the left side of this, you know, what they call a first day of issue cover. When they do a commemorative stamp, they, you know, a lot of the time now it's just on a postcard, but it used to be on envelopes, and it would be canceled on the day that of its issue in the area that it was relevant to. And while that's not his artwork on the stamp, or at least not that I could see, that is definitely not just his artwork. That is the artwork that we was donated to the museum in green, in the little alligator frame there. And you can, I've compared it there, and you can see that is the exact artwork. So that was kind of neat to actually see it somewhere where it was used commercially. And you know, you just wonder what the story of this is. How does that end up happening? Was it something that you know, he took that image that was initially done as a study for the cover of the book and submitted? Maybe it was submitted as a design for a stamp. Somehow it came into the hands of the federal government because the U.S. Postal Service used that image. Again, uncredited, doesn't have his name on there anywhere. But that's definitely his work. I did end up doing a little exhibit on the art of Bob Fink, and it was very well received. It was one of those things that, you know, my journey from having this badly damaged block print handed to me in February of 2017 until doing a little exhibit. You know, it was, you know, an enjoyable journey. I learned a lot, and again, I gained an appreciation for a guy whose name just doesn't really, you know, get the credit that I think that in a lot of ways he earned. And what happened to the block print? So a little bit of that process there. Now you can see there are scratches, there are stains, crinkles, folds, there's chunks of material missing. You know, there are pieces that were taped back on. And the pencil writing there, there's actually, he had written the address of somewhere that he had to deliver it to on the back of it. But you can see exactly what we were dealing with. And Viviana Dominguez is a conservator in Miami, and she had it for months and months and months. And one of the things that she talked to us about was the fact that it wasn't just damaged, it had been glued onto a piece of very acidic cardboard. And between the glue and the cardboard with the acid content in it, she said, you know, we can clean this, but it's just going to eventually disintegrate because of all that glue and everything. So what do? She said, well, we can take it off, but the process for doing that, you know, she immersed it, and she, with a scalpel, she scraped every little bit of that glue and that cardboard off there. So, and then she meticulously repaired all the missing pieces, mended all the areas where the print had come apart. You can see this corner here. That whole corner had come off, and you can also see a section where there was a chunk missing from it. The restoration work is pretty amazing, and as I say, you know, the restoration is now part of its story. When we got it framed, the first guy that I talked to kept saying, well, you need to put a mat on this because those edges are horrible. And I said, look, the edges are that story, you know, and I want it floated in there to really give you a sense of it. So when you look at it, and we talk about it, and we talk about that story, you can see that minor miracle that occurred. So, you know, I'm not advertising for either Art Conservators Lab or Aldecor Custom Framing, but they both did a remarkable job. Really, really neat thing. So, you know, come to Museum of the Everglades, and as Rob said, you can see it looks like a little pink house in the back, and visit the Bob Fink print for yourself, and take a look at all the great stuff that we have. And thanks for listening to my story.
That was fascinating, really fascinating. Thomas, you have a natural talent as a storyteller, and you really had us really following you on this journey. I think it's so amazing how you start with one piece and you just can't stop. You start digging in. And I think we had first met you when you came to the Coral Gables Museum, and you must have been at that point a part of your discovery, huh?
I don't know if you met me back then, because I've been to a couple of the luncheons, and I think you and I had crossed paths. But yeah, it's one of those things where when you recruited me for this, I was there to hear Cesar Becerra, who's another one of these people who falls down rabbit holes, and I have not gone to Australia in search of answers about any of the people that I'm learning out as he did. But I think, you know, that's one of the things with the kindred spirits, the people that enjoy history this much, and again, like I said, you know, I didn't want anybody to think that I came out of this as an expert on Bob Fink or anything like that. But you know, I'm one of Bob Fink's biggest fans. So
that's obvious. But listen, okay, don't call yourself an expert, but this was a nice, pretty deep dive into what was going on there. I think amazing that you got a hold of his daughter.
It is, and honestly, I don't know if she passed away or not. I tried several times to get back in touch with her. I spoke with her twice, and then I sent her things, pictures of the exhibit, and didn't hear back. And then I sent her 2 more emails. But after a certain point, you don't want to pester somebody if they don't respond to you.
Yeah.
It's you don't keep doing it. But again, she had prefaced the very first things that came out of her mouth were, "I'm 83 with chemo," in the middle of chemo, and so I just consider myself, regardless of what happened, incredibly blessed to have had the opportunity to to listen to her share some of the stories, to connect a few of the dots, and I also feel that it was a privilege to be able to connect some of the dots for her father, the things that she didn't know about, what's with the Lone Ranger mask, or, where's this commune where there's no begetting, those sorts of things. And to be able to, tell her a few things that she didn't know about her father, it was really a pleasurable thing and a privilege.
That's a wonderful bonus, really. So you don't expect that.
Yes.
And we see that sometimes here, is that somebody will come to talk to us and somebody else in the audience will give them a little nugget of information. Dr. Paul George was always saying he loved to talk to us because we would teach him something. And I think you brought up another point when you had that one page there that showed all the Merricks and the Finks. A lot of talent floating around in that DNA.
How about it?
Wow. And the vision was an artist's vision for Coral Gables.
Yes.
It only came about because they could vision it and they could realize the vision on paper. And that was the beauty of Coral Gables, is there were, I think, a lot of people that were trying to sell Florida, but the vision realized in these illustrations sold Florida at the highest level.
Absolutely.
And that was the key to the success of it, all through the family. Look at that, the architecture, the drawing, the illustration, and the visioning of places. I know Phineas Pace does get a lot of credit for Venetian Pool, and he wrote, and he built the technical drawings, but we know it was Denman Fink's vision.
Right.
And interesting that she spoke up about a few things that she thought needed to be corrected, like that. That's his baby, Venetian Pool. Absolutely wonderful.
I just want to thank you for tying things together. I remember as a kid seeing these images that the way they're drawn, they shape your perception so that when you look at reality, it highlights the things that you need to look at.
Absolutely. And I think that and Bob wasn't alone in that. As Rob said, this is a family that had an artistic vision, but exactly that rather than it's like, okay, well, here's a building. I mean, it transported you to those places. It made it somewhere that you wanted to go, that you wanted to live, that you wanted to walk down those streets.
Yeah, I want to thank you for telling me the rest of the story, because I saw so many of those images as kids, and then now I realize how much of my perception of the world was shaped by them.
And you wonder how many other artists were influenced by the style. Because I think Bob Fink's style is like my style. Like when you look at the work he did, like with the children's illustrations.
Right.
That's a style for children's illustrations. It's simple, it's direct, and you can relate to it. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of artists came up in the world having been influenced by that.
Right. And well, and that you can see that seed planted with his illustrations in Boy's Life. He's 13, 14 years old, and really already perfecting that style. It's not just in its infancy. He's got a style as almost a preteen. So it's remarkable.
Especially with kids. Let's just say that the illustrations grab them first. it's a little hard for a kid to read Boy's Life with just some text on a page.
Yep.
But you know, if the illustration draws you in, you've got to find out more about that. So it's absolutely critical, you know, in terms of it being an effective presentation.
Well, the other thing that you know, when you look at Fink as an artist, just how broad his palette was, that, you know, his architectural perspective is immaculate, but so is his figure drawing. You know, that he wasn't just a guy that, oh, he really draws people well, or he really draws buildings well, but then, you know, and then translate it into the natural world. And
right.
You know, and different mediums. I mean, this picture right in front of us, you know, this almost impressionistic feel to some of the watercolor. I look at this bottom left corner of that image, and you can actually see he's using the paint bleeding in the water as part of the effect. And I'm like, it's just incredible. I love it.
Yeah, so everything from tires to salacious novels. I mean,
yes,
if
exactly.
he could deliver and deliver on time, and he was dependable, and that's how you get work, right?
Yep.
Some more questions? Anybody?
Yeah, with Robert.
Yes, Ed. How are you?
Well, you know, for 10 years, I went to school with a young lady who claimed to be one of Denman Fink's descendants, all the way through Coral Gables Elementary and Ponce, back when it was a high school. Also, Denman Fink's office is now a museum in Ponce de Leon Boulevard.
Right.
Are you aware of that? Does everybody else understand that?
It's a beautiful building, which looks like a church, doesn't it?
Well, not exactly, but two doctors whose sons I went to school with both occupied that office for a number of years.
Well, I know I walked by it a million times as a kid, and I thought it was a church. So, but it had that giant stained glass, you know, dominating architectural feature.
So
That's why, to me, it seemed like a church, and I was surprised to find out it wasn't.
No, this is a two-story white building. This is not a stained glass deal.
Okay.
But like I said, two guys whose fathers were doctors occupied that building after he left it a number of years, maybe 15 or 20 years, for their offices.
Hello, please leave a message after the tone.
Hey, that's good. Someone's leaving a message. Yeah, let me ask you this, Thomas. Now, you get visitors out there, and you say, like, people come to go on an airboat tour, and when they have to wait for an hour, they send them over to you.
Yeah, well,
now,
and
let me ask this. What about the Everglades Seafood Festival, which is like the Wild West of Everglades City, right?
Well, I'll say two things about it. One is, unfortunately, it's canceled this year.
I know.
But the other thing that I always tell people when they say, "Man, we got to come out there for that seafood festival," you don't have to come to the seafood festival to enjoy amazing Everglades City seafood.
Right.
You
Matter
know,
of fact, maybe better not to go that weekend.
I can't say that, but I will say that I know for sure you don't have to stand in line if you don't go during seafood festival. There are great restaurants to choose from there.
Rustic,
you know,
really wonderful, realistic stuff. I mean, wonderful.
Yeah, and I mean, there's not a lot of old Florida like that left. You know, if you're wondering what there is to do, we've got great restaurants. The Smallwood store is just down the road in Chokoloskee. You know, an original trading post that opened in 1906, which actually I don't know why I didn't put a slide in here, but we have an exhibit right now in our rotating space of trading posts of South Florida. I was telling Rob about it, that we even we have Miami included. We talk about the Brickles, the Burdines, and you know, we've got Stranahan House in Fort Lauderdale, but you know, certainly a focus on Collier County. But just talking about this phenomenon of the trading that went on and the people living on the frontier, and it's you know, it's a lot of fun.
Trish, yeah.
It's also interesting when you come to Everglades City that you get the definite impression it had big plans. I think Baron Collier had big plans for the town. It was laid out as if it could be really filled in, you know, and be the major city of Southwest Florida. And then, you know, it's just kind of some homes, you know.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, that you know, Collier, you know, he came down and he was an advertising guy. He came to get the advertising account for the streetcars in Chicago and ended up buying real estate. And by the time that he headed back home, he was in the real estate business. But he envisioned Everglades City as an international tourism destination. And I mean, we are, but the level at which he saw it happening, you know, he got involved in the financing of the Tamiami Trail, but you know, Tamiami Trail is completed in 1928, and then the stock market crashes in 29. So everybody's huge dreams for whatever they thought would happen in that part of Florida, you know, were definitely put on hold at that time.
Up to that time, your dreams had no limits.
That's right.
Yeah, there's some great quotes about that. Jeff Blakely, I see you have your hand up, sir.
Yes, Tom, I would like to know what your email address is.
Yeah.
My email address is Thomas.Lockyear. Is this one of those situations where I should try and put it in this chat? Let me see if I can.
Do that. Yeah.
Let's see,
That would
chat.
be great.
Let's see, to everyone, type message here. Thomas.
Where are the Coral Gables Company papers? At University of Miami?
Yeah, Jorge Zaldivar is asking about the Coral Gables Company paper.
Eliza at the Coral Gables Museum had offered to hook me up with you know, being able to sit down. I'm not sure if they have them there or if they just have access.
All right.
Rob, Thomas, what a wonderful presentation. I really have enjoyed
Wasn't that
learning more
wonderful? I mean,
about Bob
it's-
Fink. You know, I had my office in 2506 Ponce, which is his building. That was where he had his offices. And I had my office there for 12 years. And one day I was the last person to leave the office. There were several other businesses in there as well. And I went out to that beautiful anteroom, which used to be Fink's office. That was his main office with the big, you've probably seen it with the fireplace and everything, the dramatic entrance area now.
Yeah.
And there were these two ladies just sort of looking around. And one of them was this woman that you spoke to, Giotti. I remember her last name. What's her first name?
Nancy Giacchi.
Yeah. And there were two of them, and the other one was either her sister or her cousin, but she was a Fink as well. And I spent about an hour with them, and I took them all around and showed them all the nooks and crannies in the office. And they were absolutely thrilled. We corresponded a little bit. That's probably been 10, 12 years ago. But it was quite an encounter. And I'm very pleased and proud to have spent so much of my professional life in that building. I loved it.
That's wonderful.
And it's a great location, isn't it? I mean, you walk out the door and you're right by the Peacock Bakery and you're right in the heart of Coral Gables. And
everything right there. Every single day I took a walk on Miracle Mile. I'd walk out to Miracle Mile, walk to Douglas, cross the street, walk to Lejeune, and then walk back to Ponce and back to my office. It was great. I loved it.
It's a wonderful lifestyle, that Great Gables lifestyle, isn't it? Yeah. But you know, we
love that building. I love that building.
We're all still appreciating it every day, whether we know we're appreciating the work of these people or not. We're appreciating it every day. But isn't it nice to dig in there and put a little credit where credit is due, you know, and to have somebody who really, you know, read the steal this book and quit your job and went to the Keys, and then, you know, to bring us a little bit of his perspective on this, I just think is wonderful. And it shows you the power of this stuff to grab people, you know, once you get into this stuff. And I know if you had the $2,000, you'd have that tire poster right
I
now
would.
in your living room or something. I mean, I think that was just beautiful. And once
Well,
again, it engages you into that image, doesn't it?
It's funny because, you know, it's one of those situations where I'm like, curse you, American pickers, because, you know, there would have been a time when somebody wanted, you know, $30 for,
Yeah.
you know, an ad for tires with a chicken chasing the tire. I mean,
And the
what
chicken
is
has
that?
personality. I mean, the chicken has real personality.
It does. It's fabulous. But yeah, I would have definitely had that on my wall. There's no question.
How about more questions? Anybody else? Any more questions about Bob Fink or the Museum of the Everglades? Oh yes, Lillian, please.
Thank you. Thomas, your museum is maybe closed now, I don't know, but how
No, we're open.
would you open? How would a group come? I'm part of the Villagers, if you know them here in Miami, Historic Preservation, and we're always looking for something we sort of create as a member activity. Instead of it's out to the whole county, we do it for ourselves. And I know that this would be of great interest for them to go, because we did have Denman Fink on one of our house tours where we really went to all the houses he had created. So if the person, I used to do it, I'm not the chair right now, contacts you, how big a distance in time is it to come from Miami? Do we?
From where you are, it takes, you know, putting everybody on a bus and everything like that, I would say 90 minutes. But like, for instance, I realized that I didn't have some of these pictures of that exhibit. Last weekend, my wife and I and forced our 8-year-old son to drive over and so I could come take some pictures. It's not so far that I wouldn't just drive over and go to the museum but yeah, I think that we were from Naples to Coral Gables inside an hour. So
okay, it wouldn't be right away because we have already made our program.
Sure.
We just kind of came out, but I know that there's always planning who has to be done in advance, and I would love to could tell them about it. I truly enjoyed your presentation. Just fantastic to learn more about something that is so beautiful and how creative this gentleman Bob Fink was. So
yes,
thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I would love to have your group come visit.
Maybe the only issue is if there's a limit on how many people want to go in the museum at a time. Are you currently limiting?
We are. Right now, it's, you know, 20 or less. But the other thing is that groups that are traveling together are a different thing. So but the other thing being that we can also, a group of 20, we can split up. You know, there's a way that we can create the presentation so that we can still keep everybody safe. But
it, like I said, it won't be within the first half a year. I'm just having been there, having had to find unique things that people might not have seen that has lived here a long time. This, I know, would be a new thing.
Yeah, no, that's great. And the museum's not going anywhere. So,
right.
You know, we'll be there when you're ready.
Okay.
Good weather. Go in March. Go ahead, Connie.
For the villagers, I think you might actually be able to have an event at 2506 Ponds at their old office. The city owns
we did have, if it's the one right around the corner on Ponds from Miracle Mile, I was in that one. We had it on a house tour a number of years ago when we had the thing where we used every home that had been built and where the owner were willing to open it, because the house tour draws about 700-800 people, and it is our village's biggest fundraiser. But that year we were there, so I remember walking in, seeing the beautiful, coming in the front, and then walking into offices in the back who hadn't really not been restored. But yeah, We,
And upstairs, there's a beautiful.
yes,
hall
and upstairs too. Right. But thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I wasn't up, but I am familiar with that building.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Thomas, I hope that next time you're in Coral Gables, you'll let us know. We'd love to host you, and absolutely, we're coming out there. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm always doing some sort of a trip out to the Everglades and crossing. I really prefer, going out Tamiami Trail than 75 Alligator Alley.
Yeah, I can't go that way anymore on 75 unless.
Even if I'm in a hurry,
But, I mean, I love the trail. I love that going that direction. But yeah, let us know when you're coming out.
Yeah, well, any excuse is a good time. And as I say, like February, March is really such a perfectly wonderful time to do an Everglades trip. And take your time and don't be in a hurry. There's lots of cool places to stop. Obviously, the Flaxahatchee boardwalk and the little, you got to take your picture at the Okeechobee post office. And, Clyde Butcher, you got to stop at Clyde Butcher. So, it can take longer to get there and back than you think, but you and absolutely have a wonderful lunch out there somewhere, just sitting quietly and peacefully by the water and having stone crabs or a fresh fish sandwich, some simple pleasure, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful. The Barron River. I mean, it's Barron Gift Collier. The naming rights come with that river because, before Barron Gift Collier was William Smith Allen, it was the Allen River. Before him, it was just Potato Creek. So.
And I hope that maybe we can have you back again sometime in the future. I know you have a lot of stories. The earliest stories about the rangers that were sent out to Everglades City and stuff. There's and Ted Smallwood. I mean, there is no shortage of wonderful South Florida stories there.
Yep. Well, I've got a lot of good stories. I just, when you and I were kind of poking around with them, I'm like, I have a story that relates more closely to you guys in your history that I'd like to share. And I don't get a chance to tell this story that often. So
that was real serendipity, I must say, because, it's good that you were on that journey and then you were there and we hooked up so nicely.
It was great.
But we actually want to have you back and talk more about what's in your direct wheelhouse.
Sure.
And how lucky we are to have you as a friend in that beautiful little spot out there. I'll tell you, that's such a treasure trove of Florida history, and just far enough away that it makes a wonderful visit. So we'll just have to keep that in mind always. So thank you so much.
Please do. Thank you.
Any more questions?
When do you think you would open up? Would January, February?
Oh, we're open.
That's only for my husband and I to come.
They're open.
Not yet. In the cool months. I love to go when I see the alligator like head to tail, miles.
Yep. No, all 5 of our museums have been open since June.
Okay. So I will be there, but that will be just a trip of my own.
Okay, great. Well, but let me know. Send me an email and because I'd be heartbroken if I missed you. So let me know when you're coming.
Thank you.
Okay, more questions, comments? Let me thank everybody for showing up today. I know you're busy and there's things you could be doing. The fact that you tune in with us on Zoom, I know it's a little bit of a technical challenge for some of our friends. Mary, thank you for making it. I'm so glad your computer is working. Frank, it's always nice to see you. All of our friends, Jeff Blakely, a wonderful friend of the group, and I see Mike is there. Jorge showed up. Connie, it's nice to see you. Ed is not really sleeping, but he looks like it. And Lil, nice to see you. Lillian, always a pleasure. Say hi to our friends at the Village for us, okay? Martha and Bud, it's so nice to see you there from. Is it Vermont? I think it is, isn't it? Yes.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Yes, we're here from Vermont. Yes. And heading south before too long.
Well, we look forward to seeing you again. And maybe it'll be my pleasure to visit you at your southern residence again sometime.
That would be wonderful. And I would just mention that I am Fred Hand's great granddaughter.
That's
so
right.
First photographer to have a studio in Miami.
And there's a presentation in our future there. So,
Yes.
so we'll be so honored to have you there with that and tell some family stories as well. And thank you for your donation, Martha. Say hello to Bud. Is he standing by nearby?
He's not nearby, but I will give him your good wishes. So.
I appreciate that, Martha. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, so much for taking the time to hear me tell a story. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you, Thomas. We love you, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everybody smile and say hi, and I'll take a picture. You ready? Okay, wait. Let me get my stuff together. All right, before we go. All right, I've got it ready. Okay, so everybody say hello. Hey, hi. And I'll take
Hello.
Okay, I think I got it. So thank you. We look like a friendly bunch. All right, so thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful Sunday, and we'll see you again soon. Listen out for the email, and we'll tell you what's going on. We got some wonderful programs coming up. Thank you so much, Thomas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.